Good morning. Welcome to Crosstalk Podcast. We're here to podcast all those burning questions you may have, or all the things that we're at least thinking about here at Eatonton First United Methodist Church. And I'm so glad to be here with my buddy Joe and my buddy Brian. And the three of us have already been cackling and talking. And we've solved all the problems almost, but we want to make sure that we at least give some conversation to some deeper issues that we see in our world and in our nation. We've been talking about resurrection, so this is week 4 of Easter. We always we want to make sure we call it Eastertide, and it's those days prior, those 50 days prior or 49 days prior to Pentecost. And so there's that 40-day moment of Easter, and then there's a 10-day moment when Jesus has ascended, and then after those 50 days, 40 plus 10, there is Pentecost. But today we're going to talk about resurrection. So we're pretty sure that resurrection is a topic worthy of having in our world. And that said, we're going to talk about resurrection and I guess restoration, and to some degree forgiveness and reconciliation in our nation.
And the world.
And the world. So we know that this morning there's a lot of things happening in our world and in our nation. So we know what's happening with, we don't really know what's happening. We think we know what's happening in the Ukraine, right? We think we understand that there is warfare there. We think we understand what's happening at our borders with migrants, illegal aliens. Some people like to call them migrants. It's a little easier to swallow the migrant word at the southern border. We know our hyperinflation's hit our country. And we know it's hitting the world too. And we know that there's going to be food. There are very likely food shortages coming in our world because of a lot of reasons, but probably as much because of the embargo for Ukraine, but also because the fertilizer prices have, I think, doubled. And then we know that there's very likely going to be a decision on Roe v. Wade regarding abortion, and we don't know what that decision will be, but just think about all the things happening in our world and in our nation. With all the things that I just said, where do you see resurrection happening in our world and in our nation?
You first.
Well, in the church, I've seen more people come back. In the world and the nation, I'm actually kind of skeptical about the whole it already starting to happen. And I'll go and tell you straight up, it's one of those things that I see that we as Christians need to stand up and fight to start a renewal in our world and country. Mm-hmm. We've sat too long in...
Preach.
There's a song that I heard last night that it's actually the ringtone you heard yesterday, that we've danced with the devil too long. Mm-hmm. And the name of the song is actually God, We Need You Now. Mm-hmm. We've let them take prayer out of school. We've let them take the Ten Commandments out of everything. They're trying to take God out of everything. But they want to add their own little worldly, secular, twisted, demonic part to it. We as Christians need to start standing up and fighting back. And pushing back.
So how does a Christian fight? Onward Christian soldiers. How do Christians fight?
One way that I think we have not fought is at the ballot box.
Yeah.
How many people do I know that, I'm not going to vote. My vote doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. No, they're not going to miss my vote. Or I'm too busy, I can't go vote. And I think, I always taught in my classes, when you give up your rights, you lose them. Mm-hmm. They're not there. They're not always there. And we have the right to vote. Thank goodness we still have the freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. How many Christians take time to get involved with their community, with their country? Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the people we have running for office. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to call any names, but I mean, really, some of the people that run for office, they're like, you sure you're not on a movie?
Yeah.
An X-rated movie at that?
I would go, I'll get a little closer to home, like thinking about leaders, and I mean, I'm pointing fingers at myself here, but like leaders in the church have reflected, have the leaders of the church, and have we as leaders in the community, or have leaders in our nation reflected the values that I'm thinking of, like the selfless crucify, someone who is willing to be crucified or give their life to Christ, or to, in the name of Jesus, give themselves to the nation and to the country. Have we seen that kind of selfless altruism happen in the church, let alone in the world, in the nation or the world? So I think fighting, to use your word, I think fighting looks like getting on our knees, except looking at the cross and looking in the mirror and beginning to say, like, I've really screwed up, I've really messed up in this thing, and I got to step up now.
I think one thing Christians have failed to do is, yesterday, Upper Room, the little devotional I use, it was talking about a puddle of water, mud puddle.
Yeah.
And it was reflecting the sunrise.
The guy was Japanese.
And I thought, how perfect does my life reflect God inside of me? And see, I think we've missed that. Mm-hmm. I think adults, my age and y'all's age or whatever, and older, we've forgotten a lot of our young people look to what we do and how we do, and they model themselves afterwards. I don't think we need to be hypocrites now, but we need to be honest with each other.
Well, it's not only that. In our lives and our prayer, yes, that's one thing. But we got to let our voice be heard, too. Because, I mean, look at the atheist America.
Oh, yeah.
I overheard in one of the Bible studies, someone saying, are the atheists still here? There are like 5 million people that claim to be atheist that are tied to the Atheist of America group. They might not speak like they used to, but I mean, they're the ones that got prayer taken out of school. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that got everything God taken out of the public buildings.
And I say a lot of that, Brian, was that we became so, we didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We didn't want to put them on the spot. So what happens is the minority is ruling the majority.
Absolutely. I think
that's where we messed up.
Yes. We didn't want to hurt somebody, but it's okay for them to go paint a gay pride flag all over every public building we own, every street in Atlanta, hang them from our churches, and expect us to actually be okay with going against the Word of God in our own churches.
Yes.
I feel like that's something that we've missed, that, you need to stand up for what you believe. But being so, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. It's like, well, I taught in a private school, and we had a Muslim. Well, we had chapel. Mm-hmm. The school said, you will go to chapel. If you're going to be in this school, you must do. And I agree with that. Now, mm-hmm. I think that's where we've messed up. Where did I learn the Pledge of Allegiance? Right across the street in what was the grammar school in those days. We opened every morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, and the big thing was to have a devotional. Boy, that's when I came familiar with Upper Room really fast.
So one of the things that I've been looking at, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and you got a lot of these schools that are starting to throw in critical race. They're starting to throw in all this sex, gender stuff to third graders. We need to be able to, as a church, stand behind these parents too at these meetings and say, look, it's not biblical.
Well, I was listening to something last night with my wife as we were sort of winding down before bedtime. Girls were in bed, and somebody used a crazy word that doesn't exist, and words get created from the left to sort of try to throw the rest of us, whether we're centrists or left or right of center or conservatives, sort of off kilter. Like, it's almost like they've got us on our heels in terms of intellectually, always just throwing in new words. And this morning I was looking at a certain bishop's feed, and she had forwarded a note that she got, and at the end of it, it said, "This is with regards to the United Methodist Church and all that's going on, because the Global Methodist Church has been formed as of Sunday, the 1st of May. So May 1st, 2022, the Global Methodist Church has formed itself, and it's intended to be." And I don't think it's good for us to get into too much detail, but bottom line is there's a counter sort of response to that happening, and This was the prayer that this person offered for the United Methodist Church. Just listen to the words. My prayers are especially with the United Methodist Church as we remain confident in what God has done in Christ Jesus for all humankind. Committed, just think of the words, committed to personal and social salvation/transformation, and courageous as a global body in dismantling the powers of racism, heterosexism, tribalism, and colonialism. So, like, those words, whether they're legitimate or not, just are always throwing the empowered, on our heels to have to defend. Like, how do I defend? Obviously, racism is one of those things that our nation has. It's like the scar of all scars on our nation. But racism is is placed on people and on institutions in our nation and on the world in ways that are just not fair. It's not right. Like, it's not that way. And then heterosexism, because I'm heterosexual, I'm bigoting. Like, that I'm a bigot because I'm a heterosexual, or I prefer or think that that's God's intent. Or tribalism.
What is that?
Well, exactly. See, that's what happens is we become tribalistic. I guess tribalism in the sense of, like, we're from Putnam County and you're not, so adios. It's kind of a xenophobic.
It's cliquish.
Sort of xenophobia.
You took the
like,
word.
You're from Mexico, or you're from Guatemala, or you're from wherever.
I'm from private school.
Or colonialism. Colonialism, the idea that we push the whites push the Native Americans off and created this colony. This British colony.
Well, they did.
Well, they did. That's right. But the fact that all those things are true. But when those words in one sentence get placed into, as an example, into the narrative, it's like we're on our heels, whoever we are. Those who don't necessarily understand that, whether you're intellectual or otherwise. Like, so intellectualism is sort of it has been placed upon, or has pushed upon us, almost like it's like a weapon. It's become weaponized. The words have become weaponized. So our nation and our world. I think that resurrection is happening because things like that we are now having a conversation about their legitimacy, or
See,
are
and I
they real
think
or not.
the formation of a global church is a sign of resurrection renewal.
It will be, yes. I agree.
I think there were enough of people that said, "Wait a minute, we're not going to put up with this."
And I would argue that it may not be just the Global Methodist Church that's resurrected in this. It may be the United Methodist Church finds its footing again, to say, "Hey, this is who we are." I mean, what I mean by that is when the Protestant Church was formed, there was a Counter-Reformation.
Oh, yeah.
And the Roman Catholic Church, when Protestantism emerged in the 1600s, there was a Counter-Reformation. The Roman Catholics moved mightily to reform their church. So maybe there'll be a Reformation, which I think the Global Methodist Church, at least in the mainline church, will be. But I think maybe the post-separation UMC gets its footing too.
I don't think they're going to do, because I think they're going to say, "No, we have all the money and all the power, and you can go for all we care." I mean, I don't know.
Well, the thing about Methodism, or United Methodism, is that the Episcopal Fund has $30 million in it, or it did as recent. I think it was as recently as, it may not be $30 million. Don't quote me on that, but it was a significant amount of money, and it was dwindling fast. And it was told not $30 million, but it was told to me that it would run dry by 2030. So meaning there's not going to be money to pay bishops.
Uh-oh.
So what I think is going to happen, or what could happen in the United Methodist Church, is that this church gets to 2030 and they can't pay bishops, and so bishops become moot. I mean, there just becomes no need, or they have to reassess what bishops are because they can't afford
to pay.
The denomination can't afford to pay bishops. So there will be a reformation, and you're right. This conference has $78 million to something like that in the bank. It will use those to have a counter reformation. You can guarantee that the towns where churches leave, those churches, there will be an answer. There'll be a post-separation United Methodist Church that plants in those communities.
We
got that relates to one of the topics we were just on. God does not see or recognize any of those groups or terms. That is cultural issues. God only recognizes his children and expects them to follow his textbook, which is the Bible. All the politics involved is unnecessary.
Well, I think Sunday, the guy who led the discussion Sunday, And I thought he put it so well. It's one thing he did do well. He said, here's the Bible, here's the book of discipline. The book of discipline is attempting to rewrite the Bible. And I thought,
absolutely.
that makes such sense.
So the revival that's happening, or resurrection in the church, is that it's been a long time coming, but it's the fact that this Bible is becoming yet again recognized as primary.
That's right.
And it has not been. I would say in my lifetime, it has reemerged in the Methodist Church, the United Methodist Church, as primary. It was always written that it was primary, but we didn't open the Bible when I was a child in the Methodist Church. We didn't.
I think
turn in our
the
Bibles.
Bible has been renewed, and I'm so glad to see that we're using the Bible, and at the same time, we are not so narrow-minded. We don't understand that there are interpretations. They are different, but the bottom line is it's the bottom line, the basic of what's in here. I mean, this book's got to have some sense. It's been around how many? 2,000 years.
Yep.
I don't know any other book that's lasted that long.
Well, see, one of the things with the renewal of the Bible, yes, the older generations and people my age are actually reading the Bible again to the full extent. But our youth that are in like middle school and high school, they proved Sunday that our school system is trying to brainwash them against that it's a fake book. I mean, they're trying to divide the school into, 4 houses is what they said?
Oh, yeah.
And one of them was a slave ship name. And they said it was the House of Freedom.
What is this?
You're talking about the local high school.
Yeah, well, it's a House of Friendship.
The local middle school?
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like they're taking out, what's the little guy? Hogwarts or whatever it is.
Yeah, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
But they called the one house Amistad.
Amistad, which is a slave
Yeah,
ship.
it was a slave
From
ship.
Cuba.
That's right. Yeah.
And the kids are pretty upset about it.
And therein lies I think the interesting piece of this. We are not taking this bowl of porridge, and just eating it up. Like it's not something that people want.
But see, that's
their
what
spirit.
happened with how prayer got out of schools and public and out and everything. We just all just sat back and let it happen.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, remember his name. There's a coach that was fired.
Sure.
He'd had a successful coaching career, but at the end of every game, he and his players knelt and said a prayer. Well, they fired him.
Locally or just?
I think it's not
Somewhere
local.
else.
It's out in the nation. But he's taken him to court. Good for him.
Yeah.
I hope he wins.
Yeah. Well, you would think the freedom of speech matters, but there is it's this age-old sort of power struggle in our world and in our nation and in our church of who's in charge, those at the top of the food chain or those at the bottom. And God has always said, the Bible says, and the story of Jesus shows us that the people have the power, that even if it means that they have to turn the other cheek, even if it means that they have to give up their life, that at the end of the day, the power remains at the local,
the bottom,
the local level, the people of the church, not the pastor, not the mayor, not the county commissioners, the governor, the president, not the CEOs of Fortune 100 companies. These people take power, and they, whether it's the Pope or the head of the United Methodist Church or the governor of Georgia, that they sort of wield their power and sort of try to steer the social sort of expectation. They socially engineer, whether they mean to or whether they mean well or not. They probably mean well, at least they think they do. But ultimately, it's local rule that matters.
It's so funny to see the elections coming up now. Oh, all these candidates, what they've done and how they appreciate, they will help their constituents, blah, 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 blah. Once election's over, you'll never hear from them again.
Exactly.
They just poof, go away.
Until a year or so before they have
to run again.
Well, and now with what happened or didn't happen with the COVID crisis and the election, there's so much speculation about fraudulent elections due to COVID and the mail-in ballots and all this. There are a lot of people who have no faith in the election process, which those in power may think that gives them more strength to do whatever they want, like fiat leaders. But the truth is, when people aren't paying attention, when people step away from the structure of the government, then the government loses its power.
That's right. I'll go and tell you, y'all know I did a sermon on spiritual warfare, and I used the Latin term si vis pacem parabellum, which is if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. And everything that we're talking about today is Satan throwing out the flaming arrows at us to kill our faith.
Walk softly and carry a big stick.
Right.
Isn't that what they said of
walking tall. When I was walking tall, that
Walk
was
tall.
Buford Pusser.
Okay, yeah. To walk tall and carry a big stick, like, straight
Well,
through.
there was a president that said it too, but
Peace through strength.
Buford
Roosevelt.
Pusser's the one I always remember that.
Roosevelt's the one that said it when it. Yeah.
But Buford Pusser's the one that enforced it.
I don't even know.
He
who that
literally didn't carry a weapon. He was a sheriff,
is. Okay.
and I want to say Tennessee. He actually carried a 4x4 stick that was formed into a bat.
Oh, that sounds great.
He didn't carry like a firearm.
But he never had. Hopefully, he didn't use it very much.
Oh, he.
Well, Teddy Roosevelt intended it to not be used. I think his intent was. But to your point, so being prepared for the worst, but hoping for the best, or living with a. Yeah, you're right. I think, and I still think local rule. This is the age old history shows us this age old tussle of our civilization as we know it, or the history of civilization, is that people in charge, they take too much power, and I don't know. I think it's Satan who sort of believes them into sort of the power that they think they have. Only they have to find out the hard way, or they find out the right way, that they don't have the power unless the people give it to them.
And see, that's another thing. People in power, the elected people, forget who put them there.
That's right.
I used to think it was voters, but now when you see all the shenanigans that
Sure.
swapping around
Well,
and
and senators
kickbacks and all this,
selling stocks, senators
Yeah.
selling stocks high, knowing that they're about to crash.
Right. I
Insider trading.
I'm going to quote our founder for a second, and it goes to our preaching stuff.
You mean John Wesley or
Right.
Jesus?
John Wesley.
Okay.
I knew who he meant.
Yeah, John Wesley. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church. He said Satan hates field preaching,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, I actually hate it too. I mean, this is not verbatim; it's paraphrased. I hate it too. I'd rather have a comfy cushion in a cozy room. But where's the zeal when I don't trample these?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where the power is amongst the people. And that's the thing. I think there's resurrection happening in our country. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation, it gives, there's credence to the fact that the people do have the power. Now, are there a lot of people asleep? Absolutely. There's a lot of people asleep. There's a lot of people just trying to make it. They're just,
Well, you look at some of them. If you're having to struggle to put food on the table, keep a roof over your head,
yeah.
you don't have much time for the rest of the world.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing I did tell the church I was at Sunday: put on the full armor of God and pray. I know we get, it's like any time you put on heavy weights, you want to take them off as soon as you can.
Right.
But always be prepared and be dressed for battle.
Yes.
Everywhere you go.
Well, you've got the battle, it seems to me, in the world coming against the church or the people of God. Now, when I say church, I don't mean the institutional church. I mean people who love Jesus and pray to Him daily, and read His Word in the Bible and listen to Him and to His Word in prayer. The issues that we see in the world, at least that I see it, if you want to really boil it down, you've got a new world order. You've got a group of folks really focused through the World Economic Forum, through Klaus Schwab, and this is the same group that Henry Kissinger was a part of, and the Rothschilds, and all the Rockefellers, all these people for the last, I say, 150 years, 110, well, more than that, probably 200 or 300 years. But they've come forward in this time, and they've organized this thing called the World Economic Forum, and they have a lot of the Fortune 100 companies and then beyond in their sort of, like, they have tied their wagons onto this like world government of sorts, and it used to be a conspiracy theory, but it's right there in front of you. And Klaus Schwab is speaking weekly about his desire for crypto money, a one currency, for world population control, and they talk of an environmental crisis that's coming, and so there's this global desire, this big top down desire for power and control, and you've got people. The church, I think, and those who are just asleep and don't realize what's going on yet, who are in opposition. Small business owners, people who are just trying to eat on a daily, on a normal, like just trying to be healthy, and all the things that are going on in the local community. And the local community, I think, is being empowered. While the top is very, very, at least in a worldly sense, very powerful, but the bottom is becoming empowered. And rejecting, I think, the powers that be at the top. Now, we talk about food shortages, we talk about supply chain issues and lockdowns due to COVID or what do they call? What's the new one they're talking about? I can't remember, but basically like some kind of another pandemic that they say is coming. All these things are awakening the people, and so it's happening in a local sense. I'm seeing it in this congregation. I'm seeing people empowered in new ways, are awake and ready to stand for this church in new ways. I see people across the country, or at least across the county, moving together to say, we get it. And I think there's resurrection in that. But I think if we're willing to acknowledge that there's something of Satan trying to bring us down, whether it's the World Economic Forum or if it's some virus or food starvation or whatever it may be, that when we begin to see that the quote I said, like heteroism, heterosexualism or sexual, tribalism, colonialism, all these isms don't matter. It's humans that matter, and we as humans have to come together for I think for Jesus. I mean, I'm willing to stake my life on it.
It's a pity we don't become tribalism for being Christian.
Yeah.
Because we are a tribe.
Well, it's because we become conformed to the world.
Well, and is it tribalism for us to have our sense of what we understand Jesus to be? I mean, where do we draw a line? Do we need someone at the top to tell us what Jesus is?
No.
As an ordained pastor, you don't need me to tell you who Jesus is.
That's why I'm Protestant.
You have the Bible.
That's why I'm Protestant.
Exactly. But we've put our power in Pastor David knows the answer to this.
And no offense to you, but
instead of finding it themselves.
I have relatives that are ministers, and guess what? I knew them when they weren't ministers,
sure.
And their brain works just like mine. Some of them are smarter than me. Some of them are stupider than me too. I mean, I don't need them to interpret for me.
The Bible says, "Do not stand on man's wisdom."
That's right. I mean, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I taught this when I taught Bible at Gatewood. What's the difference? Why do I need a priest?
Yeah. So we can all understand why the top of the world is trying to reject Christianity, reject the idea of God, and certainly would like for this to just be in the worldview of human, in the sense of, they would love for this to just as a general idea, like, that's a lot of tall tales. There's a lot of yarns in there. Some of it's true, but who is the historical Jesus?
But then again, I promise you, 9 out of 10 people, when they get in trouble,
of course they do.
The bottom falls out of the rope. What's the first person they call?
They say, "Oh God,
oh God,
oh God, help me."
Yeah,
and He always does.
Yeah,
because He's a good God. He's a loving God. God is real, and His identity is love.
I keep saying, and I'll say it until the day I die, if I'd been hanging on the cross like Christ, I wouldn't have been up there saying, "God, forgive him." Get him. Fry them, zap them. That's my human coming out.
Oh, Pontius, you're going to get yours, buddy.
Yeah, that's right, buddy. You just hang on. And that's what we've got to realize that. Well, first of all, our nation. Why are we even here? Why did the whites come over here, or the Caucasians?
Well, it was really I think it was to get freedom of religion.
That's right.
It was really
so
to get
now
away from
we've taken freedom of religion, and we turned it completely around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not freedom of religion. So I want to pray at a ball game. Well, I don't want to pray. Well, you don't have to bow your heads.
Right. Well, and here's the thing about, and this shows you that I'm classically a liberal. I think all speech should be free, and I don't necessarily want my children to have to hear it. So maybe there needs to be some filter, say, on public airwaves, like they don't need to hear, dirty talk. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, I mean, foul language is not, when children hear it, when the little children hear it, they don't realize what they're saying.
And I mean, I'm vehemently against, as an example, Nazism. Okay? I am.
Oh, yeah.
But I also don't think that Nazis, if they exist, and I guess they do, or communists, though I'm against communism, I'm vehemently against communism, that they should be censored. I think they have every right, and those words that I don't, Islam, I don't agree with the tenets of Islam or how they view God, but I think they have every right to have free speech because I trust that each individual can make their own decision.
And that's where I am.
Well, see,
That makes me a classical liberal, I
well,
guess.
another thing too, we got to look at where the origins of the group started. We look at what they are now. We don't look at what they originally started as.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Nazi Party was not originally started for the genocide to kill all the Jews and everybody that didn't believe Hitler's way. It was started before Hitler, and it was started as a work party.
So it was like
It was a nationalist work union.
it was a union.
It was not a let's go kill all the Jews.
So Hitler brought his ideas in.
Right.
Well, I'm still not going to stand for Nazis.
Well, and what I'm saying though is,
but I hear you. It's not
See,
national
it disturbs
socialism.
me to
man
see.
actually comes in and they pervert everything that started, even if it's for a good reason.
Well, think about the church, and think about the perversion of Christianity.
Oh yeah, I mean, think of Spanish Inquisition. How many people did they kill?
Absolutely. Well, and so the other side is the puritanical sort of movement in England. I think I said this last week, but I've said it somewhere this week. But like they went and smashed all the stained glass windows and took all the icons off the walls and burned them and all that. That was not. I don't think that was a rational decision to sort of take that. That doesn't make God happy to sort of destroy that thing which we don't like or which we disagree with. On the other hand, we should be given the freedom to read this Bible and to be able to make our decisions in the Spirit of God together.
And I mean,
as individuals.
I like to think that we live in a country where the majority rules, and that's not necessarily the case now.
It seems now that we're not there right now. It seems that we've been isolated into our little peccadillos, our little silos. And as long as we don't cause trouble, just keep it to yourself.
I started my education teaching career as a minority. First year of integration in this county. Taught in a school where I think it was like maybe 7% African American and 30% Caucasian. I was in a minority.
Mm-hmm.
So, but did that mean I had to give up my beliefs and no. I stood for what I believed. And that's where our country is. I could be sitting next to an atheist. They have the right to believe what they want to. I have the right.
Sure.
But they don't have the right to shove theirs down my throat, and I don't think I have the right to shove mine down their throat.
Well, see, we live in a erase that culture, and that's the other problem we run into. They want to erase all the history.
Right.
If you don't know the history, you tend to make the same mistakes again.
Right.
History
And
repeats
so
itself.
if you try to erase history, this is history.
Right.
I mean,
Even though it's still relevant today, it's history.
But it also gives us a guide to how we should
Right.
walk.
Look what happened to Rome when this part of this book was written.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
It starts out.
Yeah.
I mean, in Exodus.
Yeah.
Who would have thought Egypt now is a sandbox? I
Right.
mean, really.
Sure.
In that day and time, it was the ruler.
It certainly was.
Rome was the center of the world.
That's right. Well, Egypt and Rome. That's right. Egypt and Greece, and then Rome. Yeah.
And who would have thought, 2,000 years later, it's like, oh, that's a nice place to go and visit and take a picture. But, so.
Well, and now it seems that in our lifetimes, though we like to think some of the power is obviously in the United States with our military might and our sort of ability to produce, that's sort of been whittled away from the top. And China has become the producer of the world of trinkets and pencils and all things cell phones.
Oriental trade.
This Bible was probably printed in, God forbid, but it was probably printed in communist China. I sort of doubt that.
Probably Pakistan and Mexico.
But the point is, we have in the last 100 years been the production sort of juggernaut, but really the money, the finances have still remained in London, England. I mean, the crown, the sterling silver is still sort of the ruler of all things.
Believe it or not, this was
financial.
printed in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay, so
It's American
it was
made.
made in America.
Yeah.
We still produce something in Michigan besides cars. So I don't know. So all of these, I think the fact that we're talking about these issues is the resurrection of our nation. And
The last sentence printed in the United States of America.
And see, one thing you said was you were talking about the money still in England. Well, if you look at their country, they still put God first in almost everything they do.
The British?
Their government, they actually have a prayer before they meet. They have a chaplain in their parliament. I mean, they had the church involved in their
The church is a little bit. The Anglican Church is a little bit wackadoodle.
Yeah,
a little bit.
but they still
A little bit.
They still attempt to put God first.
I understand. Yeah.
You know, in their own way, they try to put God first.
Yeah.
America, on the other hand,
We
is got
don't.
to where we put a puppet on a stick
Sure.
first.
God is somewhere in the background. You know, don't mention him. Don't talk about it.
But
Make somebody
I know I
uncomfortable.
live in the Deep South, and I know that I am a pastor, so I see things with a lot of rose-colored lenses. But I do see a people. I see a nation that is beginning to, though not. I would not say it's across the nation, but is beginning to awaken to the need for God. It may not be that they show up in a church. They may not come to a Methodist church or a Protestant church or a Catholic church or Orthodox church, but I think people are beginning to understand there is a God, and He loves you, and He listens to you, and He's willing to talk to you if you'll listen.
See, I
back.
think the pandemic kind of accentuated that. All of a sudden, these people are now by themselves.
Well, see,
Nobody
and that's-
but them.
That's why I advocate so much for, and I know a lot of people hate the technology side of stuff. That's why I advocate for this.
Absolutely.
It's because we reach people that would not come to church. We reach people that would
Oh, yeah,
not go to
absolutely.
a building, or that we're not hitting on the street because a lot of times churches don't get on the streets like they need to.
Well,
And this church is actually doing relatively well, starting to do that a lot more.
And this is really the marketplace. I mean, this is really the place where ideas are shared now. And as long as we have the internet, as long as there's free speech, we have the right to do that, and people have the right to listen.
just because I don't like that doesn't mean that I look down on it and criticize anybody who does. But I think a lot of people now are realizing that yes, technology is great, but it's nothing like human contact.
That's right.
Well, see, it's like I told, and I know I bring up me preaching at other churches a good bit. At the church I was at Sunday, I told them as I got ready to leave, once you plant seeds, even if it's on the internet, it might take 20 years for that seed to grow.
Sometimes like the generation.
But that seed was planted. And God will mature it when it's His time. It's not our time, it's His time.
And you must realize for a seed to grow, it has to die.
You have to bust that shell open.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they tell you with all your stuff before you plant it, put it in the freezer. Bust that shell open, and when you put it in the ground, it's already starting to germinate, ready to go.
Yeah. So I think there is a resurrection happening in our world, but I kind of like, I don't want to say we're not on the front end of technology. We're sort of catching on to I'd say the second wave of what's going on technologically. I think in terms of the church, I think we're probably on the front wave. Like the church is not exactly on board with podcasting. I'm not, now this local church is, but I'm saying I think the church in America, especially as Methodists, we haven't really used this to the extent that it's going to be used in 5, 10, 15 years. I think a lot of churches, this will be something that's ubiquitous, I think, with church work 10, 15 years from now. But the point I'm trying to make is this is really where God is. This is one place where I think God is starting to ring bells, and that is a resurrection. I think God's resurrection is happening as a result of that. We've run out of time, so I'm going to say thank you all for watching, and share this with your friends. Share it with people that you think could benefit from it. We talked about some pretty hot button issues today.
I know I stirred the pot a lot.
That's okay. Stirring the pot's okay. We didn't get too political. Well, I shouldn't say we didn't get political. We didn't step on people's toes in a way that they couldn't at least listen or engage us.
We were on the edge of the skillet.
Yeah, it's okay. And we don't all agree on everything, and it's okay for us to have that conversation. But I do think I think this is a good conversation. If you're for power to the people, this was a good conversation. If you're a populist or someone who likes people being empowered, if you're a person in power and you don't like people telling you or controlling the narrative, you probably didn't like this podcast. If you're someone who wants to keep the masses sort of tamped down and calm, this probably wasn't a podcast for you. But if you are someone who's on the ground and enjoying the your life with Christ, and you really think that people are coming to God, coming to Jesus through conversations and then you probably liked it. So have a good day. Hope you enjoyed this. Give us your comments. If you didn't like it, let us know. If you liked it, let us know. Share it. The more likes, the more shares, the more people watch this, the more people get to see our beautiful faces. Okay, well, maybe not. God bless y'all. Have a good day.